Hey, good evening, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Brad Penovich here with your live weather impact for this Thursday evening. Now it is November 6th. We are talking some gorgeous weather. This week, honestly, has been amazing. I know the mornings have been chilly at times, but they've been seasonably cool because the average low in Charlotte is 42. So you would expect upper 30s, low 40s, but the afternoons have been unbelievable. We've seen these low to mid 70s pretty much every day this week. So above average by day, a little bit below average to near normal in the morning. So if you love this weather, I got good news for you. Your weather impacts coming up over the next 3 days, not many of them. If anything, it's going to be identical to what we've seen over the last couple of days. We're talking cool mornings, especially in tomorrow and Friday. Saturday morning, we'll probably see temperatures generally in the 40s, but then the afternoons are going to be absolutely delightful with high temperatures climbing into the 70s. The weekend, we're looking warm and breezy, maybe an isolated shower both Saturday and Sunday morning. Again, don't get too worried about the rain chances this weekend. They are looking very minimal, if at all. It's really not the rain that's going to be the story. It's going to be more so the fact that we're going to see some much cooler air. Then next week, yes, that's the story, the taste of winter that is heading our way. Right now, nothing on the radar to show you. Satellite is clear as well, mostly clear skies across the entire area. Mentioned the wild swing today. It was 48. That wasn't crazy cool, but 72 today. That's 10 off the record of 82 set back in 2003. You see our averages of 66 and 42. Where are we right now at 6:30? We're in the 60s in many locations, but we're also seeing the 50s show up. The sun sets at right now about 5:24, so it's not taking long for those temperatures to fall. And tonight will be another one of those chilly nights. You'll probably definitely want to grab a light jacket in the morning, but if you don't have it and you can gut it out, you'll be fine because by the afternoon, warms up close to 72, 71 again, very similar to what we saw today. And we've got a big night tomorrow night in Uptown at the Bank. Charlotte FC taking on New York City FC. We've got playoff soccer or football, depending on your persuasion on that. This is the final game of the 3-game series, winner take all here. So this should be really exciting. Game starts at 7 p.m. Tailgate, which is always rocking up there with the supporters groups, will be in the upper 60s to mid 60s. By the time the match starts, I think near 60-ish. So you're definitely going to probably want to grab that light jacket or long sleeve shirt, sweatshirt, wrap it around your waist walking into the game because as the game goes on, it will get chilly. Walking out will be the coolest in the upper 50s. So this weekend, there's a lot going on. We've got some cold fronts coming in. The fronts could kick off a few isolated storms to our south and west. There's a low risk over in Tennessee, and I would really say the low is the thing to emphasize here. I don't expect any severe weather. I don't even expect a strong storm, just maybe some rain, if that, and that rain chance is looking minimal. The fronts are strong, but they just don't have moisture with them to produce showers or thunderstorms. So typically when you get strong fronts, people think big-time severe weather. Well, it's just not the contrast in temperature that makes a front strong. You really need some jet stream energy, some vorticity, and definitely low-level fuel in the form of warm, humid air. We don't really have the humid air in this case, so not much fuel for these storms. But there will be a couple of showers early Saturday. Notice the timing here, 4 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock maybe. So this is long gone. Most of us will sleep through this. Grab that cup of coffee, the morning bagel, breakfast on Saturday. By the time you go out, everything's gone. It's completely dry, beautiful Saturday, mid-70s, by the way. Sunday, very similar kind of setup, maybe some morning showers, but then in the afternoon, we warm up into the mid-70s, and then the bottom's going to drop out as we go into Monday. This is our big impact for next week. Monday and Tuesday, really all day, both days. We're talking temperatures in the morning cold. Now, the morning temperatures, you should expect to freeze this time of year. The average first freeze in Charlotte all time, that goes back to 1878, is November 8th. The last 30 years, that average has crept up to November 1st. So typically, we would see our freeze about this time. That's not the concern. It's the fact that the afternoons will not get out of the 40s. So that's below our average high for January, let alone the second full week of November. So you're talking about some cold air for this time of year, but it's very short-lived. It only lasts 2 days, and by the time we get to this time next week, we'll have temperatures back in the 70s. So you just got to get through that first part of the week. But it comes as a shock to the system. Got to get your jackets out. You're probably going to turn the heater on for the first time in your house. If you haven't done so already, make sure you check that. It's always got that weird smell. I don't know if you first turn on. And you have an electric heater. It's usually dust that's sitting on the coils that starts burning or whatever. So it might be a good idea just to check the furnace and make sure everything works well. And I'm a big fan of always having the carbon monoxide and smoke detectors with new batteries this time of year, because one of the things about this time of year, people use heating sources to stay warm. It's also really high fire danger. It's really dry air when it gets cold. So fires tend to start and spread easily. So it's a good idea. Make sure you have those safety devices ready to go. Speaking of dry, we don't have much rain in the forecast. We're actually going to talk about the drought monitor with Tim coming up here shortly. It did improve a little bit, but we might be in those weird situations where it technically improved this week, but by next week we might see it go back the other direction, because I don't expect much of any rain in the forecast. We're also going to see a killing freeze early next week. So gardeners, landscapers, people that want to keep the summer plants going, this is probably going to be it. So if you want to salvage anything, cut it now, take it indoors, cover it, do whatever you can, because this is not going to be like a frost or a light freeze. This looks like a moderate to hard freeze setup. And what I mean by that is temperatures possibly in the mid 20s and below freezing for more than 5 hours. So that's the kind of freeze that just puts everything to bed for the summer season and just gets you ready for winter. Now, we always tell people, the freezes do help with the bugs. I mean, people always wonder about bugs. Mosquitoes, fleas, and ticks. It doesn't get rid of them, by the way. It just reduces their numbers. And oftentimes a freeze, what it will do, and I think people take this for granted, it drives some of those insects inside, like the stink bugs, the Asian lady beetles, which are not ladybugs. They're actually a different species, but they look like ladybugs. So if you see those things swarming on the south side of your house, those things could be all over the place. Oh, and by the way, we will have some snow in the mountains. Yes, I'm saying the S word, but don't get too crazy. I'm seeing a lot of social media people posting crazy outcomes. This is not going to be a big snowstorm, folks. This is your typical cold front northwest flow. So if you're like at Cataloochee in the Maggie Valley Ski Resort, Beach, Sugar Mountain, those are the areas that can get excited, because they actually will get some measurable snow, and they might even make some snow. But if you're anywhere east of the mountains, even the eastern facing slopes, I'm talking like Blowing Rock, Jonas Ridge, Jefferson, those areas, they'll see some flakes, but it's not going to be like accumulating snows. But it's kind of that first real blast of the season. The cold by far is the biggest issue. And if you're watching us from the mountains, yes, it's going to snow, but you know what the biggest impact is going to be next week? The wind chill. Because this cold air comes in, we could see wind gusts to 50 miles per hour with this cold air. So you're talking wind chills possibly below zero or single digits. So we're likely going to see some cold weather advisories issued next week. So I would think the cold and wind, to me, is by far the biggest story with this. So something just to keep in mind as we get ready for next week. And that cold air is going to come flying in here for the beginning of next week. But then it doesn't last long. So we'll get right to your Jerry Hunt Supercenter 7-day forecast, because this will kind of tell you the story. There's your blast of cold air Monday, Tuesday. Upper 40s for highs. That's the story more so than the morning lows. But look at the middle of next week on the 10-day. We're going to see temperatures back near 70 a week from today. So yeah, if you don't like cold weather, it's just too early for you, don't worry. It doesn't last. That's the great thing about Carolina cold snaps and winter weather. They only last a day or two. The sun comes out and it warms back up. So we'll talk about this with Tim. We got to talk a lot about the drought monitor. We'll discuss some other things and weather of the day coming up in 2 minutes with Tim Buckley from WFMY. Stick around. All right, everybody, welcome back. Tim Buckley joins me from WFMY. And Tim, welcome in tonight. How you doing tonight?
Doing fine, no complaints. Another nice fall day. Things are going good. How about down in Charlotte?
I love this weather. I'll be honest with you. This is. I like that we have the cool mornings, but the afternoons are just absolutely delightful. I jokingly called this, and for folks that are parents out there, you'll understand this saying. I call it lost and found weather, because if you have a kid and you put them on the bus with a sweatshirt or jacket in the morning, and it's like 40 degrees, and then it gets to 70 in the afternoon, you're never seeing that sweatshirt or jacket again. It's good. You might as well go to Lost and Found at the school, and there'll be piles of like, there's the jacket you left at school, because that's just typical. It gets hot, the kid takes it off, and you never see it again. So I don't know how many sweatshirts we lost on days like this, Tim, but this is the kind of week we're having. Warm afternoons. And if you don't have kids, you know it's the heat in the morning, AC in the afternoon kind of weather. It's kind of that same setup, right?
It's true. You really, you got it. It's good to watch the weather this time of year, because you really do need to know. Even these just subtle differences between, day after day. One's in the 70s, the other's in the low 60s. And even each 65 might feel totally different, because you can have one day with very low humidity and a breeze, and then the next day is a little bit different. So watching.
It is my house. I haven't turned my heat on yet, so I'll attest to that. But it's been weird. It's actually been cooler in my house. It's been cooler in my house than it's been outside in the afternoon. My wife even commented, we'll go outside. She's like, well, it's warmer out here than it is in the house. I'm like, yeah, it's kind of the trend we're in. But, hey, Tim, we do on Thursdays, we always talk about this, and we were looking forward to this. We hinted at it for a while this week. We got the drought monitor, and there was good news. There was some pretty good improvement from 2 weeks ago, because now we have 2 weeks of data. But there's still some level of drought out there, right? We still got moderate drought in a lot of locations.
Yeah, so still officially in the drought for a good chunk of the Carolinas. That's a neat animation, though. If you go back in time a little bit, you can kind of see the evolution, right?
Yeah,
and
go back
how
about
it
a
got
month.
worse, and now it's gotten a little bit better now. So it looks like we've removed that little sliver of severe drought in your neck of the woods, but it still remains in eastern North Carolina. But that seems to have been about the worst that it was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, about it looks like the end of October, right there. We had the severe, and then that's today. So, but I think, Tim, and I'll ask you this, because I think the one thing I'm a little worried about, it's like, we've seen some improvement, but just looking at the long range, we might go back the other direction if we start to see these things dry out again, especially because of fire danger. I think that's one thing that we'll have to watch the rest of the fall and into the winter months is. Because now we're getting into the dormant. We're going to talk about this in a minute, but we got a hard freeze coming up next week, and one of the things about a hard freeze, it tends to put everything into dormancy, right? It kills everything. The growing season comes to an end, and we kind of are used to that. But what that does to the vegetation, that creates a lot of dry fuels, right? So if we get windy, warm weather after a freeze, sometimes that can raise your wildfire risk a little bit, especially if you even have abnormally dry conditions.
It definitely will, and that's something to keep in mind. Like, just because it's been improving doesn't mean it's going to continue to. There's nothing that suggests we're going to be super wet going forward. And, we'll talk more about this as we get into, winter outlooks and things like that. But sometimes in a La Nina winter, you can be a little bit drier than usual. In fact, that tends to be maybe the biggest signal that we see with La Ninas. And, not every winter is created equally, and this one's a pretty weak one that might change, blah, blah, blah. We'll get into it. But dry weather may still be favored a little bit over the next couple of weeks or maybe the next couple months. So it's probably not a problem that we'll get rid of completely anytime soon, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, I don't think there's no southern branch of the jet stream, like you said. It'd be one thing if we had an El Nino set up going into the winter. We could say, we're going to get some wet weather and we got a lot of rain, but nothing appears to be heading that way. But, we'll talk about the big changes coming up next week, the taste of winter, but we got to get through the next 3 days, which honestly, Tim, look pretty amazing. If you want to get out and enjoy some great outdoor weather, the next 3 days are looking pretty good with more 70s. In fact, down here, we're forecasting some mid-70s this weekend, especially ahead of those cold fronts as we get the southwest wind. Let's talk a little bit about that. How warm are you guys going up there in the Triad?
So I have us pretty much in the low 70s for the weekend, and that might be me being a little conservative. I could certainly see it go a little bit higher than that, especially when you go into Sunday and you get that pretty nice southwest wind that starts to kick up. A lot of times the warm-ups and cool-downs this time of year has a lot to do more with the wind direction than it does with the sunshine, right?
Yep.
So on a day when you have that gusty wind out of the southwest, that could be where I might blow the forecast by a couple of degrees on the being too cool side of things. But I do see it getting pretty warm. I think we're going to have a pretty nice weekend around here. A couple chances for a shower or two, but most of them shouldn't really impact your plans. Saturday's rain chance is pretty much before you're waking up, unless you're a real early bird. And then on Sunday, can't rule out a sprinkle, but overall it shouldn't be a big impact. So should be a pretty nice weekend, but it just makes the temperature drop all that more dramatic when you're going to be going from the 70s down to daytime highs in the 40s. I mean, I don't think we'll be in the 40s all weekend, and then that's our high temperature come Monday. So
yeah, and I think we'll get to that, and let's talk about that, because I think that is the story. It's obviously, and we've talked about this offline. A lot of hubbub about snow and whether there's a real chance of snow outside of the mountains. There isn't. We'll just, but in the mountains we'll see some snow. But I think that's like burying the lead, Tim. Right? The story is the cold and the wind chills. I think those are way bigger impacts than any snow that falls in the mountains, which they're used to it, especially this time of year.
In 3 weeks, we aren't going to sound the alarms or ring the bells for a morning low of 28 degrees. Like, that's not going to be headline news. But it always depends on where you are and where you've been. And we've been in pretty much even-keeled, mild fall weather for the most part. And so we're not adjusted to it. For example, I don't know where my gloves are. I don't know where my hat is. You might not either. I got to find it. It's in the lost and found, like Brad said. So these are things you got to consider. Brad doesn't know if his heat works yet. These are things you got to do before it comes.
Yeah, and I think that's the big story. It's so funny you said that, Tim, because I said that during our newscast earlier tonight. It's like, the 27 or 28 I'm forecasting for Tuesday morning, that's not that crazy. It's more the 47 I'm forecasting for the afternoon that is probably the bigger shock, because we would expect to freeze this time of year. So I pulled some stats today for Charlotte, and just so everybody knows, in the Charlotte area, Tim, our average first freeze is November 8th. On average, that's all time, going back to 1878. The last 30 years, that moving average has kind of crept up into early November, but it's pretty much right now. We would expect our first freeze in Charlotte basically right now. What we don't expect is our high temperature of 47 to happen the second week of November, which I had to say this today to several people. That is colder than our coldest average high in the middle of January. So this is really cold for this time of year. And to have 2 days of it, I think that is really part of the shock. Not only the drop, but the fact that it's not going to warm up in the afternoon. We joked about this week, it's cold in the morning, but it's been warming up in the afternoon. Well, next week, Tim, it's cold in the morning and it's cold in the afternoon.
It really is. That's such a good point, because it is common, and like you said, on par for when we get our first freeze. For our area, we're right around Halloween typically for the first freeze, and we haven't had one yet. So it's a couple, a week behind for us or so. But I'm plugging in some numbers now. You got me curious, so I'm going to type in, when do we usually get our first day that doesn't get above 45?
That's a good
day
one.
or night. All right. So and this happens, like you said, the average high never gets quite that cool, but averages are made up of warmer and colder. So every year we're going to have daytime highs in the 40s and sometimes daytime highs in the 30s even. On average for Greensboro, we have November 23rd is when we typically would have our first cold day with highs below 45. So that's for this area. I would imagine to be a little bit later for Charlotte. But that's
put
pretty interesting stuff around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I was going to say, I always feel like we do around Thanksgiving. So I'm going to put in our first, I got to put in the right, less than or equal to 45. There we go. So our first one on average, November 26th. So on average.
Wow. Okay.
So we're not too far from you. So basically around Thanksgiving, that we would see our first high in the 40s. But I think Chris Mulcahy, our morning meteorologist, pulled the stat today. The last time we were in the 40s for a high, I think, was for us in Charlotte was back in February. So it had been a while since we've seen a high like this. But, this is going to put an end to the growing season. So, Tim, I think the other thing for the gardeners and the landscapers, the farmers out there, it might be kind of time to put that summer garden to rest. And I saw some people on my page today, Facebook saying, yeah, I'm probably going to make some cut some of the flowers because I know they're probably going to be dead next week. So maybe get your last harvest of your summer crops and let everything go to rest for the winter.
Yeah, it's about that time. Whatever you have going on, everyone has different gardens and stuff. For me, I knew the basil was going to die, so I made some pesto this weekend, that kind of thing.
All right, now you're talking about
whatever
language
you want
right
to
there.
do.
That sounds good, actually. Man.
Some of the herbs go all winter, like rosemary's fine, thyme, all that kind of stuff. But basil, you got to keep that thing warm, so the leaves are turning black. But you can freeze it too. So if you make a big batch, you can put it in ice trays, and then you have it throughout the wintertime if you'd like.
Interesting. Yeah. All right. That's a good tip, actually. Yeah. I would love a good herb garden because I like some good herbs. That's definitely and you could grow those inside too, which is nice too. If you can get a nice window herb garden going.
And they're really hard to kill. They don't tend to have a lot of. You don't need a green thumb to keep those things going, like some other vegetables, right? I have a hard time with tomatoes and keeping and tends to be like rabbits and any of those critters. They don't like to eat the things that smell really strong.
Nope.
So they don't tend to go after the herbs all that much. But good luck keeping your veggies with those around.
That's been our biggest problem is animals. I cannot keep the deer, the rabbits, the birds away from it. The deer are the worst in my neighborhood. They're domesticated deer, Tim. They don't care. They're not scared of my dog. They're not scared of me. I've tried crazy things like coyote urine. Yes, that's a legit thing. You take coyote urine and spray it so scare them off. Nope, these deer, they're city deer. They just come in and they're drinking their Starbucks and eating my tomatoes. That's what they're doing.
That is the thing about the Carolinas. It doesn't matter how urbanized you are. Our cities, we keep all the wildlife. They're all still around.
Yeah.
In the city limits often, every kind.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the cold. We got to talk about the snow a little bit. Let's talk about the folks in the mountains because I love snow. I'm not going to lie. I do love a good snow, and I love that. I love skiing. So the mountains, we've got this chance of a good northwest flow event, but we should caution everybody that east of the mountains, this does not look like we're going to see anything, Tim. I mean, we see this sometimes show up in the guidance, some little phantom snow showers east of the mountains. I would say the times I've seen it just from personal experience, maybe 1 out of 10 times does that ever really happen. It's like an anafront, we call it, an Arctic front, where you get moisture behind the front and east of the mountains. But it's pretty rare. This looks like a classic northwest flow event. And so if you think of areas like Beech Mountain, Sugar Mountain, Roan Mountain, those typical spots we love looking at the cameras, that seems to be the spot where people are going to see some snow that at least accumulates, right?
I think so, and I think for them it's kind of a slam dunk that you should count on some snow. At this point, it would just be refining the details. I was saying this earlier to somebody. If you want snow east of the mountains, or rain, or any kind of precipitation, you really need to redevelop it on this side somehow.
Yeah.
So from like a weather perspective, you would need to have some sort of jet dynamics, something to create rising air on our side, independent of the wind, because the wind's not going to get it. That northwest flow is not going to do it for you because it will dry out. But in that 1 out of 10 times that you talked about, maybe sometimes you get like a strong enough cutting trough that there's a little lift afterwards and you get a little extra precip forming here. I don't think I see that in the models. It wouldn't shock me if we get some sprinkles or maybe even some grapple or something.
Sure.
But I kind of doubt even that would be likely. And if you did see it, it probably wouldn't be anything to write home about.
Yeah, it's really hard. Like we always say, when the cold is chasing the moisture around here, it's hard to get snow. So you tend to want to get the cold first, and then you want to get the low pressure to come in and override the cold. The front that brings you the cold is rarely the one that brings you the snow. It's always the second system that goes into the cold, right?
In this part of the country, anyway, that's absolutely true. I've sometimes wondered, is that true everywhere, or are we a little special with our geography? But it's definitely true here that you've got to have the cold air first. It doesn't change over.
It really does. The only place I think where the cold and snow come together is obviously in the Great Lakes, because it's all with the lake effect, and you're going to get clobbered, with the
Yeah.
cold no matter what. But yeah, it is a very unique thing, and it's just one of those things you learn over time by just seeing systems come in. But for folks that want to see snow, as you mentioned, Tim, I think Banner Elk, Boone, they're going to see flakes flying, and whether it accumulates a
Yeah.
bunch. But those are places you could actually see snow. If you want to play in the snow, I think you're going to have to go to Beach and Sugar. And I'm really curious, Tim, knowing the ski resorts like I do, is one of them going to try to make snow next week just to say they opened 1 or 2 runs early? It's more of a marketing thing. It's not
Yeah.
like great skiing, but it is so cool when these resorts
Right.
can put the press release out and say first resort on the East Coast to open up, and it's like Cataloochee or Beach, and they only have 2 runs, but they're open, right?
And they probably would be able to do that with this level of cold coming up next Tuesday. I would say if you're going to try and chase the snow, make sure you're a hardy person, because it's not just going to be, wimpy snow. It's going to be very cold, and it'll be very windy.
Yeah.
And the higher elevations you go, the worse for both of those 2 factors. So if you were going up to like Roan Mountain or something, you better be ready for 50-mile-per-hour gusts and probably a wind chill around 0 or worse. I mean, it's going to be brutal. Just keep that in mind.
That's so true, and I think that's something everyone in the mountains should take account for. We're likely going to see cold weather advisories with brutally cold wind chills. So even in the snow where it is going to snow, Tim, the story still might be the cold up there. So stay safe, everybody. We'll see you again, not tomorrow. We're not going to have a show. We'll probably see you again next week. But stay warm and be prepared for those big changes next week.